But let's get started this morning with our conversations on CARICOM. We're happy to have those, as always, with Barbados Ambassador to CARICOM, His Excellency David Comissiong. Ambassador, good morning to you.
Good morning, Pearson. Pleasure to be here.
Good to see you yet again. Now, this profound statement by the Church of England says a lot. But a lot of people are asking, what does it say? What did they say? And what does it mean for all of us? Put it into context for us, if you don't mind.
Well, you would recall that last week we had a conversation about reparations. Last week we were looking at the story that had gone viral all around the world about Barbados pursuing reparations claims against Benedict Cumberbatch and Richard Drax. And we also reflected on what happened on the 19th of December when the government of the Netherlands made an apology for slavery and indicated that they were going to be involved in some type of reparative or healing process, as they called it. So within that context, on the 9th of January, have the Church of England, the Anglican Church in England, issue a report confirming that much of its current £10 billion endowment fund actually had its roots in the church having invested in a slave trading company in the first half of the 18th century. That the church was acknowledging this, they had investigated it, they were apologizing, and they would be setting up £100 million investment fund, basically a reparation fund to do investments in present day communities that have been negatively impacted by that history of criminality. And Pearson, one of the things that really impressed me about the Church of England statement was the strong moral foundation that they gave for the position that they had taken. And if I may just give a little quote, this is a joint statement was penned by the Bishop of Manchester, the Right Reverend Dr. David Walker, who is Deputy Chair of the Board of Governors of the Church Commissioners. The Church Commissioners is that entity that controls this massive endowment fund, and a Barbadian, Mr. Alan Smith, who is the first Church Estates Commissioner. He is basically the key person that deals with the investment of that massive fund. But this is what they said, and I quote them: "We believe every person is created in God's image. New Testament teaching is focused on God's desire for human beings to live in harmony. Justice, in this case, racial justice, must be part of, not distinct from, biblical theology. The concept of Sankofa, looking back to move forward to a better future, enables us to make a commitment to truth-telling, especially where historical truths are concerned. We are deeply saddened by the news," that's the news of the church's implication in enslavement, "but recognize it enables us to set an example of moral leadership and meaningful action that other organizations committed to a better, fairer future could follow." End of quote. That impressed me, Pearson, that they have not skirted around the issue. Like we have seen the British government skirting around the issue, that slavery was legal and that kind of nonsense. They went right to the heart of it. The gospel of Jesus Christ tells us that this was a sin, that this was wrong, this was a crime against humanity, and we are not skirting it. We are admitting it. We are admitting institutional guilt. Our institution was involved. We are apologizing, and we are willing to make amends. And the importance of this, we could quibble about the £100 million fund Whether it should be more, of course, I believe it should be more, but it's a start. But the importance of this is that it presents a challenge to those other institutions that have been skirting the issue. Now that the Anglican Church has come out with this very clear moral position, how do you respond, British government? How do you respond? All those companies and institutions that were similarly implicated. So this is very important. This, in my opinion, is an extremely important development.
That is such a profound question you've asked as well. How do you respond? You know, I've read some background to this. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, he called it a source of shame, and he says it's time not to take action to address our shameful past. But all of this came out of a group of commissioners assigned by the Church of England to look into this, to do some research into it. And they've also gone as far as asking some of their other churches there to also do greater research to find out their involvement in slavery and the slave trade. How significant is this 100 million? What do you think this money could do for us and our development following that acknowledgement by the commissioners of the Church of England?
Yes, well, the church looked into a fund that they had in the early 18th century called Queen Anne's Bounty, and the fact that they took this fund back then and they invested it in shares and annuities in the South Sea Company, which was a private, public British company that was trading slaves to the Spanish colonial empire. And incidentally, Barbados and Jamaica were the two focal points in the Caribbean. The slaves were brought from Africa. They were brought to Barbados in the Southern Caribbean, Jamaica in the Northern Caribbean, and then they were transshipped from these two Caribbean islands all over this hemisphere, to Argentina, to Colombia, to Venezuela, to Cuba, all of this Spanish possessions. So Barbados is central to this story. But we should be very clear. This is only one component of the Church of England's involvement in slavery. Their involvement goes way beyond that. I mean, the Church of England actually owned slaves, and particularly in Barbados. Christopher Codrington, he bequeathed his plantations, Society Plantation. It became the Society Plantation. He bequeathed it to the Anglican churches, the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel in Foreign Parts. That's how it became Society. So the Church of England became a major slave owner, and the records show that they treated their slaves extremely badly. When the British government abolished slavery and compensated the slave owners, it was discovered that some 100 Anglican clerics received compensation money as slave owners. The Church of England itself received compensation money as slave owners. And then there's also the damage that was done by the church perpetuating a theology of Black inferiority to justify enslavement. So I say all of that to make the point that the 100 million pounds, which is really 1% of the church has a 10 billion pound endowment fund. I think that should be seen as a start. But what they have said is that they intend to create a permanent fund. And this permanent fund, they will be investing, and much of that investment will be grant funding in projects that will make a difference, a positive difference in the lives of African descendant communities that exist today, but that are the descendants of enslaved Africans of the past, and whose lives would have been blighted by slavery and the slave trade. They have also said that they will be including representatives of our African and African diaspora communities in a committee that will run how this fund is used and what kind of investments are made. so that we will have an input in determining what projects are to be funded. So we are moving in the right direction, Pearson. We see this as a start, as a very positive start. But as I said, it now throws down the challenge, because that South Sea Company was created by the British government. The British government invested heavily in it. So if the Anglican Church is saying, by our involvement in this company, our investment in this company, we owe reparations, then what about you, British government? The British royal family, Queen Anne, the reigning monarch at the time, was allocated 22.8% of the company's stock. When she died, her successor, King George I, he inherited her stock and he purchased even more. And virtually every member of the royal family was an investor in that company. Then the whole of the British establishment, almost every member of the House of Commons, half of the members of the House of Lords, the literary icons of Britain, Jonathan Swift, Alexander Pope, Daniel Defoe, scientists, Isaac Newton, they all invested in this slave trading company. The founder of the Bank of England was one of the major investors. So the Anglican Church has set an example, and that is going to challenge all of these entities. What are you going to do now? Are you going to follow the example of the Anglican Church, or are you going to continue to try to skirt your moral responsibility?
That's a good question. I could hear it resonating in the minds, the cavity of the minds of people right now. Ambassador, we have to leave it right there, but I want to thank you again for bringing it to our attention and bringing it to the attention of all Barbadians everywhere, the peoples of the region, about what's been going on in our agitation for reparations. And I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning as well. Thank you.
My pleasure, Pearson. We are making very, very good progress. Momentum is building.
It is building. Thank you, Ambassador. He's talking there about the South Sea Company, which has transported, based on history, 34,000 slaves in a crowded, unsanitary, unsafe and inhumane conditions during the 30 years of operation. So it's pretty significant what has happened, and we thank the Ambassador for sharing with us the perspective so that we're a lot clearer today.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.